what I'm working on is this lovely analog gauge that they come with. I'm going to be replacing that out right now with a new digital gauge. So instead of a mile per hour gauge, a speedometer on the left, and I'm going to have a tachometer on the left, and everything else will be digital on the right hand side. From what I've read online, these are supposed to be a lot more accurate. My speed on this thing is way off. When I run my GPS on my phone, it'll say I'm going 40 when I'm actually going 52. So it's about, at high speeds it's 10 to 15 miles per hour off. At low speeds it's about 5 to 10 miles per hour off. So we're going to replace it out with this thing, see if we can't get it a little more accurate. Basically, for your front fixture, I've already undone them, but you have 2 bolts. You got one that goes right in here and one on the same exact spot on the other side. You take those 2 bolts out, this whole headlight assembly comes right out. And by the way, if it's helpful, the ones for the headlight assembly are 8mm. The ones for this assembly on the bottom, the nuts, are 10mm. The ones down here, the smaller bolt on here, or the larger one I guess I should say, the nut, is a 17mm. And the one for the other side of the attachment is a 14mm. So you're gonna need a 14mm, a 17mm, an 8mm, and a 10mm to get this done. Alright, so now removing the analog cluster to put the digital cluster back on. There is a bracket underneath here. You can see the 2 bolts holding the bracket on there that this is attached to. Underneath, that bracket has 3 bolts that come right underneath here. You can see the 2 right there and 1 right over here. And you have this line, which is what runs down to your front tire, which is what gauges your speed and your distance traveled, your odometer, tripometer, and speedometer. So I'm going to see originally, so I don't have to take this whole front tire off, because that wire goes from there down here and attaches here. Now the new digital cluster did come with a new one of these, but I'm going to install the digital cluster and I'm going to leave this factory one on here just to see if it still works. If not, I'll probably end up having to swap this back out, but for now, just so I can get the digital cluster on and working, I'm going to undo these 3 bolts, undo this, get the digital cluster, and get it on there. You have all of your wiring harnesses sticking right out the bottom here, so they're easy to get to. They're just little push clips. You pull them up out of the rubber boot. You got a little pin right here that you push on, and then you pull the plug separate. Always pull from the plastic harness, don't pull from the wires, because you can strip a wire straight out of your connector, especially on these Chinese bikes when they're not built great. So I'm going to go ahead and get working on that. I only have one hand, so the video's going to stop. I will be back in a moment. Alright, so once you undo your 3 bolts, you got 1, 2, 3 on this bracket, and you undo your wire. I forget the exact terminology for this, correct me in the comments. You pull that out, you get your wiring harness right down in here, and you've got a clip on the bottom side. I'm going to need 2 hands to do this without breaking any wires, but you just push this little pin on the bottom with your thumb and lift up on the harness. I'm going to try it with 1 hand, it's probably not going to work. Nope. But you just pop that guy off of there. The new one, a little more complicated. It has the same harness, which isn't a problem. That'll clip right into place as you expect it to. It's got this one, which is for the new drive-by wire, or whatever you want to call it, for the speedometer and odometer. It's also got this harness sticking off the bottom with all these wiring clip connections. Now, I don't have my manual. This thing didn't come with a manual, or at least I don't have it with my parts. So my best guess on that is that is the harness that is going to run down to the engine area. Woo! Before I drop everything. To run the tachometer, considering the factory one does not come with a tachometer, so the wiring harness is not going to provide that. That is going to have to run down to the engine bay area, and I'm going to have to do some research on that. So we're going to get this thing hooked up with what we currently have in place, kind of, because I'm going to have to run that part down to the tire and take the front tire off now, because I'm noticing this one does not have the factory connector on it. So right there, you'll notice this one has that screw connector for this to go into, which is not present on the digital. I guess I should have expected that. That's what this 3-prong is for. So I'm going to get this thing mounted and then get my dirt bike lift out of the garage, motorcycle lift, and work on taking this front tire off, which involves this wire here, which runs up to there, runs down to the tire. Alright, I haven't run all the wiring yet down to the tire and all that, but I did get the initial part of the harness hooked up. So this is what your display will look like. Right now, even if I drove, it would still say I'm going 0 miles per hour because I don't have the wiring hooked up, but I just want to give you an idea what it looks like. Now it's on to pulling off the front tire so I can get all that wiring hooked up properly and get this thing working. Alright. Alright, so to get the front tire off, you got a bolt on this side, and you got your actual axle, if you will, on this side. You undo it, you got to hold both sides. I've got a handy electric ratchet, which makes it a lot easier. And a son that's getting ready to ride his because he just got done fixing it. He just got done replacing both front steering forks on that one. And my older son there, holding it for him, just got done fixing... Oh, what did you even do to this thing?
Handlebars, grips, clutch, air filter.
Handlebars, grips, clutch, air filter, fuel filter?
Yeah, fuel filter.
Yeah, so he just got done fixing this thing up. He bought that from his buddy so he can turn around and flip it.
Now it just needs rim and energy.
So if any of y'all want a dirt bike, he's got a 125 for sale. Once he fixes the front tire. Yep, he's going to be selling that one because he wants to get a 110 because he's getting a little too big for the 50. So, all that to come. Alright, when you take this bolt out, or axle if you will, be very careful because you still have everything attached. Don't do what I just did. Tire came right out. Thankfully it came right off the disc brake. Wheel that over here for a minute. And you're left with this. This is what we were trying to get off. So like I said, this is the device that calculates your speed and tracks your mileage. So we're going to replace that with the new one for the digital cluster, which should be a simple fix or a simple swap. Alright, so here's our new one. You can see the old one we tore off. Basically the exact same thing, looks a little bit different. Analog versus digital connectors. And I'm going to need 2 hands to do this, so I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do. It goes right on here, right like this. There's a little pin right there to hold this part in place. You're going to take your axle bolt, run it through this hole, and line this guy up. Once you get it far enough in that it's just barely at the edge of this, is when you're going to pick your tire up, hoist it in between, line it all up, and jam your axle bolt all the way through, and then use your nut to re-secure your tire back in place. When you're doing this, make sure that your disc brake on your tire goes back in to your caliper so you have brakes. If you hit it, you might jam it up against the side of the brake pads, damage your brake pads in the process if you're not paying attention. So just pay attention, put it on there the right way. Actually, I'm just going to fix this rubber grommet while I'm sitting here looking at it because this is supposed to be right here to protect the wire. Speaking of which, the new one did also come with 2 of these. The factory one had 0 on it. And you can see, let's get that in place, the factory wire was already wearing through because it didn't have the rubber grommet to protect it. So make sure you put the rubber grommets in where they're supposed to go. One of them, as you can see here, is going to go inside this metal clip. The other one I am going to put up here inside this metal clip. That'll help protect it from vibration and rubbing and damage as it goes down the road. So I'm going to get this put back on. I'll see you in a moment. Alright, through bolts back in. Make sure it's nice and tight. Again, an electric ratchet makes it quick work. Then we take this guy, which we got in place. We got him right in the same exact spot as the old one. He's a little bit turned down, but I'm not too worried about it. Take your wires, run them up. Take this little rubber grommet, slide him right into place all the way to the end. That will help hold it in place, keep it away from your tire from damage, and keep it from getting vibration damage from here. I'm going to run the next one straight up and do the same thing here. It's a slightly different adapter, so it's going to be kind of loose. I might need to tape that. I'm gonna go get a zip tie, and I'm actually gonna zip tie this rubber grommet in place right here to help hold it, to keep this thing from coming undone and wiggling, because this is where the damage on the analog one happened. So give me just a second, be right back with a zip tie. Alright, took my handy dandy Harbor Freight zip tie. Before any of y'all say anything in the comment section about Harbor Freight zip ties, there's a video out there, watch it on YouTube, that talks about the really expensive zip ties you can buy versus the cheap ones. And these cheap Harbor Freights held up, I think it was 90% as well as the ones that were 10 times more expensive. So that's what I use. That should hold that rubber grommet in place, keep my cord protected. Once I bring it up in here and get it attached, that'll hold this whole wire taut so we don't have any further issues. If you want it to be a little bit more secure, if you're going to be hitting a lot of rocks and some nasty stuff, you could wrap this in some sort of protection coating. I'm not going to do that. I just trail ride with this guy and street ride, so we're not going to bother with all that. But I'm going to get this headlight assembly back off. I only put one bolt back in it, so that way it would hold it in place while I lifted the bike onto the stand. But I'm going to take this back off so I can get back to the wiring, get that plugged in, and then I'm going to be doing some research online to see about how I do my tachometer wiring, which looks like it's going to be a whole mess of fun. I'll update you on that. Thank you very much, guys. If I learned anything, like, subscribe, share. Appreciate the watch. Alright, so we are on to wiring up the tachometer for the new digital display. We got the new digital display cluster installed, new headlight installed. What I did is I ran the wires straight back down behind the gas tank. There is a small little clip area underneath here. It's hard to see in this shot, but it runs right up underneath there. And there is a clip you can see right there with the green and yellow wire that's holding it. I ran the new harness wire directly inside of that clip. Now there are other videos and other people that'll tell you to take your gas tank off. You can do that, and you certainly can run that wire up a little bit higher with the factory harness, but I didn't feel like taking the gas tank off for this. And with that clip there, it also runs back right over to here. There is another area where it can clip right up in here, which I clipped it there, and another clip right here. So I just ran it a little lower on the frame, should be fine. And then you run it into this rubber boot. So this rubber boot has all of your factory harnesses in it. You can see this one right here, this green plug. If you actually pull it out a little bit and look at the back side, there's only one green wire going into it. There are 5 open spots. So those are your gears 1 through 5. So you can tell your digital display what gear you're in. And the colors, thankfully, match up to the colors on the new digital hookup. So we're gonna go ahead and plug all those in. But you take all these, I had to pause for a second because my sons were pulling up on their dirt bikes. But you take all these, you line them up with the correct color wires, pop them into place, they slide in a certain way, and you will hear them click into place once you pop them into the right place. The one wire that I still have to figure out, which we'll get to in a moment, is the blue and white wire. This wire supposedly is the tack, and I got to figure out where I'm wiring that to, but I will figure that out, and we'll be back in just a moment. Alright, we got these 4 wires lined up. I haven't pushed them all the way into place yet because I'm going to double check and make sure that they work. The last wire is yellow and white. If you can see it there, my camera doesn't want to focus, but it is yellow and white. And I have a blue and white and a brown and white left over. Now, I'm under the impression that the blue and white is the tack, so I'm going to take the brown and white and just kind of lightly push it into this place just to see if that is the right one, because it should be based on the number of wires I have and what's left. I don't want to press it all the way in case it's not, but I'm just going to kind of wiggle it in there. And I'm going to test it out now and make sure that it'll now tell me my gear position. Alright, so right now it doesn't show any gear, shows neutral. Alright, so I just went ahead and started it up. You got 1, 2, won't find 3, there's 4, and it won't find 5. So let me just wiggle those wires and see if that's my issue. Alright, Alright, so I pressed all the wires into place a little bit better. We got first, second, third, fourth, and the brown wire is fifth. So now we got our gear selector. Now we just got to figure out how to get the tachometer wired up. Be right back. So like I said, these all go in a certain way. I had left them out a little bit just for testing. We just got done testing. So I'm going to press them all the way down in here. You shouldn't see the metal sticking out the top anymore. They should go all the way in, just like that brown wire did there. So I'm going to press all these guys into place. If you have strong nails, you can just use your nail. Otherwise, you can use some sort of pliers or a pick or something, but they just pop right into place like you see there. So all I got left is the pink one. There we go. And all of them are in place. Now, we got to figure out our blue and white wire. I'm going to do that right now, and I'll be right back to tell you how to do it. Alright, so the tack definitely was the blue and white wire. What I did is on the back side here, you can see there's already a blue and white wire in there. So I just kind of wedged mine in between. I'm also going to grab some electrical tape just to help hold that thing into place. But I wedged it right behind, and it's pretty solid in there. I mean, you could get one of those line taps if you wanted to, strip this back, tap it right into this line if you wanted to. There's a couple different ways you could do this. I went with this method because it's just quick and easy, and I'm going to tape it in place, and I'm not too worried about it coming loose after I tape it down. This purple wire, I'm being told, is probably 6th gear. This bike doesn't come with a 6th gear, so I'm just going to kind of tuck him in out of the way. You don't really need that wire. But just to show you what this new digital display looks like once you get it all finished up. I still got to put my seat and everything back on, but here we are in neutral. Helps if you turn your kill switch off. There it is. So you can see I'm idling right around 1900 RPMs, 2000. Give it a little rev. And now we have a tachometer on the Hawk, as well as a digital display readout with all of our gears. And a digital gas display. Hopefully, we're going to test out the speedometer and just make sure that that is a little more accurate, because that was one of my biggest issues I was having before, is that this is supposed to correct, is that the speed I was going was not the speed it was showing me. So we're going to see if that's accurate, but I'm going to put the bike back together. Please like, subscribe, share if you guys liked any of the information. If you found it helpful. Put your seat back on. All you're going to do, take your seat, which I put over here, pop it back into place. There is a small groove you need to find to wiggle it back on. Then it goes on the front. And you have 2 bolts, one on this side, one on the other side, both in the same location. You screw this back on, and then you take your plastic fairings, put these guys back on, and then we're good to go. One other modification that I did was changing out the battery. The battery that it came with was really cheap, crappy, wouldn't hold. So I replaced it with this guy here, and that's been amazing. This battery's been in here ever since I bought it. The Mighty Max high rate gel series battery. I haven't had any trouble with it. It just didn't fit in this area quite as well as it should have, so I used some styrofoam to just kind of wedge it into place and hold it, which seems to be doing a good job. Like I said, it's been there for the full 500 miles I put on this thing, which have been pretty rough miles. So it holds up, does well. Check that out. Like I said, I'll put links in the description for the headlamp and for the digital cluster. If I can find the link for this, I'll put that in there as well. But again, if you liked the video, if you found any of it useful, like, subscribe, share. Appreciate y'all.